And we're going to start.
Totally dangerous.
Okay. Welcome to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and we have a beautiful cast, I would say, of characters, of people here tonight on this ET Roundtable. It's formerly called the ET Roundtable, but this discussion has gone off in many directions. We'll get to what ET stands for, but it's gone into levels of consciousness, what it is that we are, how do we explore the unknown. Basically, I want to introduce some of my guests. Co-hosting here with me is Henrietta Weekes. She's also has a chapter in my new book, Making Contact.
Which is a fantastic book.
Thank you for the
No, but it is. It's actually one of the best one about the subject.
And thank you. And also,
unbiased viewpoint.
Also joining us is Elizabeth Satoris, who's an evolutionary scientist, who I really appreciate her intelligent explanations and understanding about levels of consciousness. And we'll be talking, really, that's sort of the theme of this show. And we have Mara Lombard, who is returning here as an incredible intuitive psychic, aware explorer of consciousness as well. And Steve Spear, of course, mystic, occultist, mystic, occultist, artist, incredible
fantastic visual artist.
And who else do we have tonight?
We also have Dr. Tony Stern over here, who is, wow, what is he?
Wave?
Yeah, he's a psychiatrist.
One hand waving.
He's a brilliant psychiatrist. He is also a mystic, an all-round good human being, an incredibly creative poet, and a beauty, a gem, and a character.
That's me.
We have Antonio Zavala Kugler, who is a filmmaker, a writer, a mystic, and a beautiful human being.
But more to the point, we have the two Antonios.
But more to the point, we have a trio over here of the other Antonios.
Okay, and who else do we have here? Michael,
perhaps you could introduce yourself very briefly.
Yes,
that would be great.
Just list the spiritual masters you've studied with, Michael.
Well, I've spent a dozen years in Asia studying with Nim Karoli Baba, with many of the great Tibetan spiritual masters, teachers of the Dalai Lama. I worked with Buckminster Fuller and with Jonas Salk. And Jonas Salk had this great vision, which I think is relevant to here. He sees non-duality combined with a scientific orientation as what's necessary as the next evolutionary stage for humankind. And he had a scientific view, which is that populations follow an S-curve. And we have two generations, he thought, for humankind to get it together, to shift into a paradigm of enlightened cooperation. Otherwise, he thought the life-sustaining capacity of the planet for the human species would be degraded.
Aren't we past the time limit? Aren't we past two generations now?
No, I think from the time he told me this, I think we still probably have another 30 years.
Yes,
but,
30 years until what? Until what happens?
Get it together you see, what is interesting about Salk, which is very different than, say, progressive ideology, is he does not negate the way humankind has been in the past. He said the need for a strong man, to protect the tribe, and all of this was part of the human evolutionary process. But he said that when we shift to the top of an S curve, he thinks there's a new power, that all biological species follow an S curve, that when we reach the top of an S curve, which is, I think, at a 13 billion people on the planet level, that we need to shift from a paradigm of competition to one of cooperation, and a shift from having the, strong man, the Saddam Hussein, the, Putin, the whatever, as the leaders, to one where we have wise people guiding society. And for him, it was not that we were going to have just the mystics running things, but it was an approach that combined spiritual insight. And he was someone who, never, I don't know if he talked about this publicly, but someone was born with a non-dual awareness.
Right.
He thought that, and wanted me to find other people like that and bring them together. But he thought a scientific orientation together with a non-dual awareness is what's required for humankind.
Yeah.
Great. I love
Agreed.
that. Elizabeth, do you have any comments about that?
I do actually, because I was living on a little Greek island. My first book had just been published in New York, and Jonas Salk had read it and made a point of finding me on this little island where I just newly had a telephone. And when he called and said he was Jonas Salk, I said, the Jonas Salk? Anyway, he asked me to get some like-minded people together, and we became friends, and I still meet with his brief successor at the Salk Institute. A group of us have become family on the strength of connections to consciousness. And I also want to mention, because I don't know if I'll get to talk again at this time.
Oh, you will.
I was a speaker at the very first disclosure conference in 1995 in Washington. And Alan, I wanted to let you know that I have a gift for you. I have a digital copy of the proceedings of that symposium. And it's a perfect copy. I don't think any other digital copy exists. And I'm going to send it to you and then let you distribute it as you like to other people.
Could I post it on YouTube? Is that something I could do? To share it with the world?
A whole free book? I don't know.
Oh, it's a digital book copy. Oh, I thought it was a video copy when you said digital.
No, the proceedings were in hardcover, but
okay. No, I won't post that. No, I'm
they're
sorry.
hard to find in paper even.
No, thank you for that. No, I'll just read it and probably just share it with
I got a friend to scan the whole thing into so that it's a PDF book.
I will send you, well, you can send it to my email. That's great.
And then I'll let you decide what to do with it. Thank you.
So no, I mean, so this conversation will include some ET discussion, but I also want to ask Marla about the realms of consciousness. And Marla, particularly in reference to a friend of mine who just passed over unexpectedly. And she was young, vital, vibrant, alive. And I'm just wondering if you could have, I'll show you a little picture here. Do you see her there? Do you have any?
Isn't she lovely?
She really is. Can you tune in and see what happened? Like why? I mean, there's always this kind of stuff, but I mean, anything you get from tuning into her name?
Mm-hmm. I'd be honored to. What's her first name, please?
Well, her original name was Katie, but she called herself Guru Jagat as part of the Kundalini yoga. She was a leader in that field. She had her own yoga place, yoga center in LA. And yeah. And so
Guru Jagat.
Guru Jagat is her name she's used the last 20 years. Jagat.
Okay. I don't know why, but I discovered some time ago that it helps me to have the person's first name. I don't know why, because I don't need it, but it's a little bit of an anchoring thing. So I want to, if you don't mind, I'm going to try to contrast what I'm going to say about this guru in a moment with a medium reading that I did today, in which, this is going to be quick, Alan.
Take your time. Take your time. It's okay.
In which a woman crossed over to kind of a tropical area with giant white flowers, wearing like a little bit of a sarong and showing herself as a 1940s or 1960s, like super shapely, like va-va-va-voom, and was all happy in her voluptuous female sexuality. And
this is the woman you read today, a different woman. Okay.
Yeah. And she just crossed over recently. So she was very happy in her female body being sexuality. So that's sort of a more earthly level. And the reason that I tell you this is because Katie, if she doesn't mind if I call her that, has zoomed up to if there are different levels on the other side, which I perceive that there are all the time, Katie has zoomed up to a very high place in which she can influence the world in a sort of pyramid shape. I don't mean that it's a pyramid, but she's up here at the top and she can influence and disseminate information. Now, what she's going to try to learn how to do, and she hasn't quite figured this out, is to get information down to our world level. And she's got to try to penetrate our brains. And if she can't do that, she's going to try to penetrate our hearts. And I don't mean this in an
She did that in her
way.
teachings, though. When she was teaching, she was at that level where she would bring that information down.
Oh,
That's why she had such a loyal, beautiful following too at her Rama Yoga place. So yeah, that's, I think, exactly what she tried to do here.
okay. And it's
Okay.
not invasive. I just want to be clear about that.
Mhm.
Her attempts, and she tells me, I kind of love this about her. She's humble. She's like, I'm just going to attempt to do it. I'm going to do it the best I can. I'm going to refine my technique. I'm going to practice as I did on Earth, practice, practice, practice. She encourages everybody to practice their spirituality, no matter what that means to you. And she's already connecting with, so she's at the top of this one pyramid, but she's connecting with voices, that's what she calls them, that are far above her. And Alan, you'll love this, and away in other dimensions. I'm not just
But
saying
she
that.
was very much, no, she was into that. We talked a lot about that. She really supported my book and my work. But why did it have to be so sudden and in a way so tragic? Just.
Let me just ask. Well, she doesn't see it as tragic at all, of course, from where she is. I just want to speak to how humble she is. She must have been this way on Earth too.
Yeah.
She has no, I just want to say this one thing, then I'll address that because that's kind of a big thing. But in this model that she's going to be using, there's no hierarchy in it, actually. It's just being a point of information and then disseminating it. So I just want to make that clear because I
think that's how she taught. I think that was a part of her earthly model. Yes.
Oh, so humble.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't have chosen leadership originally. She would not have chosen it, but she took on the mantle of purpose. And there's a point where you realize your self-purpose and you think, okay, that's what I have to do then. And she did it. So now let's talk about her crossing over. So of course, from where she is now, she sees this as completely not tragic and perfect timing. I'm just going to tell you what I get is that while I don't know, she's a little disconnected from all of us here in a way that she's just not troubled. She's not troubled about what happened. She doesn't care. She's excited about the future. She's got to learn new techniques. And she doesn't care. I mean, she just doesn't care.
Froze, but she'll return.
She'll return. Marla will, or did we freeze?
Maybe we did.
Oh,
Are we? Oh,
here we go.
I don't know. I can repeat that last part.
Yeah, repeat that because there was a little bit of freezing going on.
Okay. I don't know the circumstances. I'm just telling you from where she is now. Nothing tragic, perfect timing.
Okay. So there's no message necessarily she's just working on the other side, you're saying?
Well, if you're going to go, it was a good time in history to go.
Why is that?
She can do a lot more on the other side.
Okay.
Interesting.
She was very limited by, and she knew it, Alan, she knew it. She was very limited by the human dynamics, not her. I'm not saying her human dynamics. She,
No,
I
I
think, was
know
very
what you
clear
mean.
that-
The forces that were trying to work against her speaking out. So thank you. That sounds really accurate considering you didn't know her at all. So, but I want to take this kind of, I guess, reading as a jumping off place for these.
Oh, is that Alan locking up? Is anybody else locked up?
I don't think so.
I can hear you, Steve.
Yeah. So Mola, I'll just wait till Alan comes back. How do you go about your process when are you channeling or are you doing mediumship?
That was mediumship. So I feel like I am connecting with wherever she is. Or at least sometimes I feel we're meeting halfway.
Are you a trained medium, Mola?
I've been doing it for about 22 years.
A spiritualist?
Well, spiritualist was a movement,
Marla,
right?
I was just saying, and everyone, what's the relationship between those levels of consciousness that exist without the body and, let's say, these ET forces that exist beyond this dimension? Is there a relationship? Is there a relationship of consciousness no matter what plane of existence we're on? Do you know what I mean?
Who are you asking?
Okay,
Steve.
Wait, turn up your volume.
Yeah. Alan?
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, as we're talking about these levels of consciousness, we have Michael who's talking about a kind of Eastern philosophy, Mala who's I don't believe is a spiritualist, but is accessing things. So where does the idea of the hidden masters or the ascended masters come in as a kind of ET phenomena?
That's a good point.
Ask Krishnamurti.
That is a really good question. Michael, do you want to answer that? Or?
Well, I mean, historically, it came in with the Theosophical Society. But again, you've had these same kind of notions in the Eastern traditions for thousands of years. But Madame Blavatsky and Leadbeater, brought that into the Western world, and the Theosophical movement was very influential. And as people know, they found Krishnamurti, who was a gifted person with some, presumably with qualities that they could train to be a world teacher, but he didn't take on that role. From the perspective of Indian spirituality, they're both beings on different planes of consciousness, both higher planes of consciousness, non-dual planes of consciousness, as well as expansive domains of consciousness that are still ego-based. And then, there's also the belief that there are beings who have physical bodies who exist on other planets, and that it isn't just the Earth that's populated by intelligent life. So that's pretty much what I've been taught by great masters, and that's the Eastern view of things.
What do you say? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you so much, Michael, and I'd love to hear from Dr. Tony Stern.
Yeah, Tony, jump in.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, it's of note as we speak of the tragedy of death as we experience it on this side, that the further trajectory of the narrative of Krishnamurti it wasn't only Krishnamurti, Jiddu, whom Leadbeater identified and discovered on that beach in India when Krishnamurti was 14 years old. He also discovered his younger brother Nitya at the age of 12 on that same beach. And years later, Nitya came down with some kind of very severe illness. The hidden masters, according to Leadbeater and others, I think mainly Leadbeater, assured and reassured the older brother that Nitya would live, but he didn't. He died. And that was what catapulted Krishnamurti into depths of skepticism and soul searching about the hidden masters that he had previously not experienced, and led to, really was one of the main things that led to the remarkable 1929 dissolution of the Order of the Star speech.
Pathless path, right?
When pathless path at the age of 29. The year before, he had given, I think, the first quote speech to the gathered Order of the Star Society, where people left it saying it was like the day of Pentecost, where there were holy winds blowing through this and that and the other. He showed his stuff that year, and the next year he disbanded the whole society, all of which is related to the tragic death of his brother Nitya, and the fact that even if 99 out of 100 times the message from the ascended masters or hidden masters was correct, somehow it was lost in translation that 1 out of 100 times, and it led to maybe colored by wishful thinking, who knows what, but it led to Krishnamurti's dark night of the soul.
It led to a sobriety too of Krishnamurti. It's like, people put their beliefs in these high masters and not in themselves. And that's why Krishnamurti comes out and says, there is no leader. Salvation is a pathless path and no one could lead you there. You must find it yourself. So it was a great awakening, don't you think, Tony?
Yes, 100%, although it was a brutal awakening for many of the people who had given their lives and a lot of their money. I mean, one of Annie Besant's big worries about her adoptive son, Krishnamurti, was, how are you going to live? Because they were, at the time, the equivalent of many billionaires who had basically given him castles and this and that.
Right.
And in dissolving the whole order they had founded around him, what was he going to do? Well, it turned out that worked out fairly well. He didn't starve, but
no, he didn't starve.
Nor did he ever. I wrote him a letter. I had personal contact, as I was saying to Alan. I had personal contact with. He was one of my spiritual teachers when I was younger, and had personal contact with him through my friend David Chamber. And I had written him a letter prior to that, asking him, "Are you the world teacher?"
The Maitreya.
Well, the world teacher Maitreya. I didn't use the word Maitreya. They use various names. Are you the world teacher? And he wrote back, well, whomever I am. He never disavowed that title. Actually.
He didn't.
He never did.
Right.
But in my opinion, in my scouring the Krishnamurti writings, so when I wrote him near the end of his life, "Are you the world teacher?" he wrote back saying, or he had his assistant write back and quote him as saying, "Well, whomever I am, listen as carefully as you can to my teachings and make your own decision about whether they're true or not," which was consistent.
So Marla, I want to ask you about teachers like my friend and like Krishnamurti. And if you said she can do more work on the other side, what is the purpose of being here? I mean, why is this? Why does it have to go back and forth? And can't you do as much work on this side that you can on the other side? I mean, I don't get it.
Good question.
Well, I think there's many answers to that question in my experience, but we'll just address her.
Yeah.
I feel like she's very interested, as I said before, in skill building. So this lifetime that she just had was a perfect place to build skills, understand levels of communication, understand complex personalities, individual human motivations. This was like a great primer for what she's going to do now. Now, I'm not looking at what she did previously, but for her, and I don't see this really. I think she's unusual. Maybe not, though. I mean, that's a thing to think about. Preparation for what she has to do now, which in her view is far bigger. She can reach many millions of people instead of just, I mean, she says, I feel like I reached 3.
She said
Yeah.
that just now. That's amazing.
I'm
Yeah.
sure she reached many more people than
Well,
that.
thousands, I think, thousands, but not millions,
But
thousands.
truly reached.
But
perhaps.
truly reached thousands,
Sorry,
but not.
That's a pretty good number
Right,
to
right.
truly reach.
Wait, Steve, what were you going to say, Steve? Steve, are you with us?
Steve.
Steve,
just, yeah.
unmute. But
Yeah.
we
Are you there? I'm
well,
unmuted.
you
You're not
froze
hearing me?
with your mouth open. I hear you.
Are you hearing me?
We hear
Okay.
you.
I wanted to just, my internet connection and stuff. I wanted to bring in Theodore Flournoy, who wrote a book in 1900 called From India to the Planet Mars, where he was worked with Helen Smith, who was a kind of relatively famous medium, who thought she was both a reincarnation of a Hindu princess and from India and a regular visitor to Mars. So I'm just, I want to bring up, that's 1900, which I think sort of predates the whole Ledbetter stuff. I wanted Michael, I
It
think.
does predate it. I think the
Right.
Krishnamurti thing was like, when was
20s,
it?
30s, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
29.
so-
I think it was 1909. He was discovered on the
Right,
beach.
right.
Yeah.
So this was 1900, you know, so I always like to bring in the precursors to this stuff and try to, now I'll just say really quickly that when we were talking about the Ascended Masters and the last guy who spoke was talking about Krishnamurti, can we maybe think about how these energies are transmitted from person to person across the millennia? I was talking the other night about J.G. Bennett's book, Masters of Wisdom, where he traces the demiurgic, shamanistic flow from Genghis Khan in Mongolia all the way to Christ. You know what I mean? And then does that Christic energy, that Christ energy, continue on through the millennia and now is possibly possessing, we'll use that word, beings like Krishnamurti and these other people. Possession being also, I'll end with this, is that people give up their being, they sacrifice themselves so that they can be possessed by these energies, these Christic energies, I'll call
This is
them.
what Krishnamurti's think. He refused
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I just want to bring that in and also
Well,
bring in these kind of historical.
I was just asking Tony, Krishnamurti had a chance to sort of channel the world teacher, but he, I think, denied that and said, get out of here, sort of, didn't he?
That's above my pay grade, number one. Number two, it may be above anyone's pay grade to figure that one out.
Mhm,
I would say that is one angle on it.
Yeah.
That's that's the one, that's probably the mainstream theosophical angle on it.
Right.
But what did they know compared with Krishnamurti, number one?
Exactly.
But number two, putting a Jungian angle on this, as well as bringing one of my faves, Martin Buber. Jung spoke of archetypes, which Buber is convinced was just another name for the passions. Be that as it may, that's a debate for another time, or a dialogue for another time.
Right.
But in the meantime, Jung and the Jungians did appreciate both the glory and necessity of channeling the archetypes, i.e. giving yourself over to higher and lower and more powerful beings, as well as the huge danger and the stake of that. That a balance is to be struck between surrender and being your own person.
Yes, I love that. That balance.
That's from Jung's Wotan, addresses that specifically. Jung's Wotan in Civilizations in Transitions addresses the fury of the zeitgeist possessing, in Wotan, it's the nation of Germany. I also believe, I'll just say really quickly, that Tezcatlipoca is a dominant.
Tezcatlipoca. Tell us who Tezcatlipoca is, Steve.
Well, nobody seems to care about Tezcatlipoca. He's the scapegoat.
We don't know about him. We might care about him if we knew about him.
Okay, well, now I'll tell you.
Good.
You know, person with the red hat, do you know who Quetzalcoatl is?
Yes, you know Quetzalcoatl, the Mayan Christ.
Despite this red hat, which is from one of the
Antonio knows.
highest
Okay.
beings on earth right now, Baka Rinpoche, despite my wearing the red hat, you might be misled at how many high beings with strange names I have never heard of.
Tezcatlipoca.
Antonio, do you know Quetzalcoatl?
Yes.
Can we
Yeah,
just hear from
Antonio,
Antonio?
come
Yes.
jump into the
Yes.
conversation here.
He's from Mexico and
Yeah.
and actually
Come
has
into the
more
conversation.
knowledge of the Mayans.
There's an emblem of Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl literally means plumed serpent,
Yes.
and it's the flying serpent, and it's in the emblem of the Mexican flag, and it's also the surrounding figure. It actually resembles the Ouroboros, which is a dragon serpent, a
Biting its own
flying
tail.
reptile, biting its own tail. That is the emblem around the
It's cool.
Aztec calendar. That the stone, the sun.
And what about the guy Steve's talking about, Quetzalcoatl?
So
Finish
Tezcatlipoca.
with Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl is amongst the Mayans, and also the same emblem, but it has another name. It's
Quetzalcoatl.
Kukulkan.
Kukulkan.
For the Mormons, Quetzalcoatl is Jesus in
Literally?
America, literally.
Wow.
For the Mormons, it's Jesus come to America. And the legend behind Quetzalcoatl is that it's a white bearded man. If you see Native Americans throughout the continent, they don't have facial hair. Quetzalcoatl was a bearded white man.
Right.
No, that came and
Antonio, but Tezcatlipoca.
Quetzalcoatl is the god of war, whose main symbol, mind you, strangely enough, is the hummingbird. Why would the hummingbird be the emblem of the god of war? You'd imagine a jaguar, you'd imagine an eagle, you'd imagine a puma.
Tezcatlipoca is Quetzalcoatl's brother, and Tezcatlipoca lost his foot in a battle with Quetzalcoatl, and his foot is an obsidian mirror. Tezcatlipoca's names are He to Who We Are Slaves, the mirror that smokes, and the obsidian mirror. So I've proposed and supposed that Tezcatlipoca is one of the dominant spirits, as Wotan was in Nazi Germany, talking about the Jungian.
Let me ask you something about what else do you know about the obsidian mirror, Steve? You're an occultist, no? What else do you know about the obsidian mirror?
Did you see? You froze there, Steve. Can you say, like, people use this obsidian mirror? I took an obsidian mirror workshop to tune into these other realities.
There's something about the mirror.
I don't-
Yeah, you can use it as a searing device, as a reflection of your own consciousness.
Searing?
Searing? No, scrying.
Yes, scrying.
Actually, John Dee, who founded the British Empire and used the term the world encompassed, was using an obsidian mirror given to him by Francis Drake, and that obsidian mirror was consecrated to Tezcatlipoca. So just, we were talking about archetypes, so maybe we should get off that. But we can talk about...
No, we don't have to get off it, but why did you bring up Tezcatlipoca? What does that have to do with the conversation?
We were talking about Jungian archetypes, and Tezcatlipoca is a Jungian archetype, and also as an extra beyond human intelligence, right? Tezcatlipoca, Quetzalcoatl, Wotan. How do these non-human intelligences influence us? You know, or communicate with us?
Well, and I think that's why I wanted to do this roundtable. You know, the last couple of weeks, this has kind of gotten off the topic a little bit, because there are these non-human aspects that are influencing, or we are starting, I feel, that the veil between these worlds is getting thinner. You know, even though Blavatsky said the Isis Unveiled was the kind of opening of the Aquarian Age, I think there is this other level. Elizabeth, do you want to talk a little bit about this, these kind of dimensional overlays that seem to be happening as the government's coming out with information, as more and more people are going out in space, as people are just more aware of this topic.
And can I add to
yes.
that, Alan, as well? Just a question to Elizabeth, Steve, and everybody here. Marla, Michael, Tony, and Antonio. Like, are the veils thinner now than they ever?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Are they, or have they always been? I mean, I don't know. I'm just.
Well, Marla might be the one to.
Well, there could be, you know, and Michael and Elizabeth, or everybody, just chime in, because
I don't know if Elizabeth's still listening, but yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know that they are. Maybe they're not thinner, but thicker.
What do you say, Antonio?
The perspective, if I'm not mistaken, from the Kabbalists is that the universe is turning more and more dense with each generation.
I think it's getting less and less dense.
They say that they say that with the energy that you need today, the effort you need today to be half decent.
It's both.
A few generations ago would have made you a sage. Just the level of concentration, presence of mind that you need today to be halfway decent would have been enough to have turned you into a sage a few.
What does Marla say, who is surfing between the dimensions? What do you say, Marla?
Yeah, good. Marla.
I have so many questions too, but if I had to make a judgment call, I would say that it's getting thinner. But I wonder how much, and I'm not kidding about this or using it as a cliche term. How much are we evolving? For example, everything that we're talking about, like Jung, I love the archetypes. I love all of this. But what if all of it is inside us and it's not external? And therefore, the dissolving or the thinner realms is not, I'm just positing, is not between us and them, but in fact, us and us. Like maybe a different level of brain power, accessing different areas of the brain. I mean, the brain is very creative, right?
Yeah. And we'll learn a lot more about
Well, that's what they're saying about ETs now. There is no out there. It's
ETs as an extraterrestrial?
Yes. Yes.
So
there's no out there. I think that's a relevant statement.
Right.
Which is to say, if I only had a brain, I could actually say this. But I think it's relevant.
Lean forward.
Speaking of Krishnamurti, his close student and associate, David Bohm, of blessed memory, and Carl Pribram, a Stanford neuropsychiatrist and neuroscientist, teamed together to invent or create or discover, whatever you want to say, the holographic view of the mind and the universe,
right?
Or the brain and the universe, and it depends whether you say the mind and the universe or the brain and the universe. I mean, according to Wilder, Penfield, and other neuroscientists, the mind is beyond the brain. The brain is a kind of reducing valve or some kind of processor or valve is like the spigot of a beer keg.
I call it the software, and the brain is the hardware. But you need the operator to function.
The mind, the brain is a vehicle of the mind.
Well,
I think so. I mean, according to some model, if you look at a beer keg, the brain is essentially the spigot.
Well, it's like a computer. The brain is the hardware.
Okay.
That's how I
Brain is
intimidated.
mind is software. Absolutely.
And you need the operator, which is consciousness.
Absolutely.
I don't know enough about hardware and software to say, but I'm not even a beer drinker, but I will still keep it simpler for my simple mind or brain and say, for me, the model of a spigot and a beer keg works better. Well, nonetheless,
continue.
I will say,
model of the mind.
I will say that vis-a-vis the question of what's outside and what's inside, Krishnamurti really set us straight as a question, not an answer, which is you are the world.
I know, but when
whoa! I'm not
sure.
Which is to say, in my opinion, if you really take that as a Zen koan of sorts. You come to the point of appreciating more and more deeply, probably till death do you part and beyond, that everything is both inside you and also outside. Which is to say, it's a Mobius strip.
Right. I like that.
It's one yet two, me and you.
I like the Mobius
I
strip.
do too.
But when Mahler is like reading, wait 1 second, Steve,
Yeah.
these other people, I get the impression, is reaching outside of herself to access these.
Her usual self, her accustomed self.
But so that's outside of you, right, Marla? You're not,
Well,
or are
maybe
you
not.
going in?
You know
Maybe
what?
not.
It feels that way, but
Ah.
I would never say that it is necessarily that way.
Beautiful.
But how is that?
And,
how do-
you know, I
I-
trained myself. So I didn't, Alan's heard this, Henrietta's heard this, but
Oh, it's
I
okay.
didn't
Tell us
have-
again.
well, I didn't have spiritual teachers, but I started having these intense spiritual psychic experiences. So I started investigating on my own. And in the beginning, I did feel as if I was receiving help. I had access to other realms. But the further I go along, I began to see it in a way as
Amen.
one. I mean, I'll just say that probably for like 18 years, maybe longer, I felt like I was living in two worlds. I was constantly accessing one world and then living in this one. But then I asked myself for integration. Now, whether I was asking the larger or the smaller or whatever, I actually started to integrate so that I do feel that it's more one world inside myself. And I do think that, people are always saying like, we're only using 3% of our brain or whatever. But I have come to think that that is really more true than we can know. I think we have areas in there to access. I think also we have amazing communication systems set up. They're already in place. They've always been set up. We've always been able to read micro expressions and, perceive energies. I mean, this is just something that humans do, right? So we have that system in place. But I think accessing these different areas of the brain are crucial currently.
Yeah, Antonio.
Antonio had something to say in response to
Yeah, please.
3% of the brain.
We just thought about our partial perceptions.
Yeah.
We are aware that a perception of light is a very narrow bandwidth in the whole spectrum
Yes.
of electromagnetic signals, no?
Yes.
Above the blue is ultraviolet, and below the red is
Infrared.
and then radio waves. And that comprises about 30% of the known
world.
Electromagnetic spectrum.
Right.
And that applies also, I read recently, to matter. We are only aware of 30% of what there is, say astrophysicists today.
Right. And what does that
Which
apply?
is so interesting.
But what does that have to do with the inner and outer worlds?
It has more to do with Marla's assertion that we only use X% of brain. That's probably the percentage of which we are aware of,
Right.
of the faculties of the brain.
Well, when you go beyond this realm, wait 1 second, Steve. When you go beyond this realm, Marla, where the people you communicate with, it seems like because there is no brain, there's no filter that filters out those worlds. And so there's a much more wider view of this bigger reality, right, Marla? So,
Yeah, but I feel I'm being like, I feel like in some ways I'm narrowing it because it speaks to the spigot or this hardware and software. I have to have a story that I can tell my client. I have to have a story that I can tell myself.
Right.
Really.
Right. I mean, if I were just a feeler, that would be great. I could connect with energies and absorb and exchange and have no idea what's going on. But I'm the kind of person that needs to make a story out of the energies.
yes,
And I don't
Steve,
mean fabrication. I just mean comprehension.
right, to make sense.
We've spoken a lot in the past about the narrative. And I speak with Alan about it. And I also speak when I do mediumship. I just spent a week in Lilydale, and the idea of the narrative. Yeah. And I was doing mediumship. I was doing everything in Lilydale. But I've been a little bunch. I do mediumship too. I just want to say about the inner and outer, the idea of the inner and outer worlds. Again, I go back to Ouspensky, who said we need to learn to think in different categories. Inside and outside are perhaps not the right categories to talk about, and we define ourselves and restrict ourselves to that. I also just want to say one more thing about the aura. The aura in traditional spiritualism, we can do exercises with the aura and expanding the aura out from the body, which is expanding our intelligence out, non-local intelligence in a way, but also using those etheric energies. When we were talking about the light energies and the electromagnetic spectrum, we have to remember that quite possibly there are realms of perception and energies that we are, again, not categorizing. We're going back to the cage of light, which is the heliocentric model, where our energies come from the sun. But there are other energies out there. So that's what I wanted to say.
No, I think this is, go ahead, Marla. Yes, go ahead.
I have a question. So, and this is for all of you. So how far do you think, given our physical limitations, how far can we evolve into consciousness, into spirituality?
Henrietta.
Tony.
I want to hear you. Okay, Tony, yes.
I'll go after.
Wait, on yeah, there you
So, Eckhart Tolle talks about the story and going beyond the story. That in order to really reach what Krishnamurti would say is freedom from the known.
Yes, I love that.
Freedom from the known itself, just the title. Just the title is some serious spiritual teaching.
Yeah.
Freedom is freedom from the known.
And David Bohm and others say, the known is one small island in the unknown. And if we're clinging to the known and any stories about the known, we are not going very far.
Good.
Well, that fits exactly into this whole UFO discussion, because when we talk about ETs, UFOs, we have no idea. I don't think anyone has an idea of what that really is. Go ahead.
Well, no, and I just wanted to chime in here with one of my favorite writers on the subject, who is John Mack,
Yes.
the Harvard psychiatrist, who...
And then John Mack, it's a small world after all. David Shainberg, my buddy, of blessed memory, who was one of my mentors in the Jubu world, Jewish Buddhist world, who was a good friend of Krishnamurti's.
And what about?
And through whom I met
John Mack.
I met Krishnamurti at close quarters. But he was quite friendly and a good friend of John Mack. In fact, when I applied to be a psychiatry resident at Cambridge Hospital, he wrote John Mack on my behalf.
Right, he was the head of that hospital, wasn't he?
Well, he was a big fella there. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
Well, just speaking to this,
Yes.
what we were speaking about, because I'd love to read John Mack on the subject of UFOs and abduction experiences, because in his practice, he realized that there was really something very different going on, and that it couldn't be categorized within the usual diagnosing symptoms, etc. It was really something
May
different.
I say, that's the
Wait, let her finish her.
Well, and so
Sorry.
recently on a webinar, we had a very interesting woman called Barbara Lamb, who's a hypnotherapist and regressionist who's been working for 40 years. And she just kind of dropped in very casually. I speak to John Mack occasionally, I think. She said, I think. And John Mack has told me, you guys, when I was there with you guys, and you guys now, you really don't know what it is.
That's what John Mack. Wait, let me get Elizabeth in here. Elizabeth.
I wanted to have some chats with him.
Come into the conversation. Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes.
Right. Well, John Mack was one of the speakers at that original disclosure conference I said I had a digital version of course, and JJ Hurtak also.
Yeah.
He's so fantastic.
Yes.
So, there's some advantage to being my age, because you have a very long trajectory. I noticed that, Steve, you said something in the chat about a 1950s utopianism when we brought up people like Jonas Salk. Sure, utopianism, however, was not restricted to the 1950s. It's still around.
Right.
And I'm in a sense, a practical utopian. I believe that we can learn enough from nature to build a caring and sharing human society.
I agree with that too.
That's
I
a
agree
utopia.
too.
So-
Totally agree. But wait, Elizabeth, Elizabeth, I want to just ask you about your ideas about this understanding of these other realities, these, let's call them ETs.
Yeah.
Are they beyond what we have called them, in your opinion? You know?
Well,
But we're-
everything in the universe is beyond what we call it as humans. I mean, we give names to
You're right.
everything. I remember once
Sorry,
when
that's a stupid
I was
question.
supposed to be
What-
teaching.
what- I know.
Do I still have the floor?
Yes, please.
Oh,
I want to hear what
okay.
you have to say.
I
And
remember.
we're also
once-
going to devote a whole show to you, Elizabeth,
Yeah.
maybe next
I
week. But
remember once long ago when I had to teach a little biology course to people on a whale watching cruise. And I was afraid that I wouldn't know the names of the things in the tide pools if we took people ashore. And an indigenous friend of mine said, just have the people ask them what they want to be called, because our human names don't mean much to them anyway. And I just noticed on a list of Karen Noe's principles of oneness, that she talked about how we should be respectful of the animals as of ourselves. And I wanted to add, what about the plants and the funguses and the microbes? Because nature is all of those things. It's all of those things. And we can't diss any of them without getting ourselves into trouble. So we need that 99.9% of good, healthy, friendly microbes to protect us from the few renegades. It's like human society. Some people are bad, you know.
But
they're very few compared to the whole of humanity.
But don't you think, Elizabeth, we're about to take a leap into a greater reality besides schmutz at the bottom of the stairs?
Yes. I mean, you know, all indigenous cultures were in touch and in communion with those greater realities, whether they were ETs or angels or trees or microbes or whatever. But now we're at a different stage. We had to go through this youthful evolution into our technocratic high-tech society in order to come back, you know, teaching ourselves individualism in a rampant way, in order to take the bringing us back together to another level. And it is the first time that we're challenged at the global level to understand our oneness. And we know it can't be through centralized government. And the ETs that have come have all been friendly, or they would have taken us out, as we know.
I agree. But go ahead.
So
Well, no, I
let's
just-
be good earthly and cosmic citizens.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, because we've been talking a lot today about Sri Aurobindo with Michael and Tony and Alan Pryor. Exactly what you said about this, we had to go through. He talks about this, going through every single thing of individualism, science, the age of reason, the Enlightenment. You know, everything leads to as much knowledge as possible to come back to, or not to come back to, but to rejoin.
To spiral upward. To spiral upward.
Exactly.
To spiral upward to, you know, to the source, which is the natural world that you speak of, with more understanding and communion with it.
So that we get a better understanding of source by having gone through that whole youthful phase again. Yes.
Exactly. And of ourselves as humans, which we really don't know much about.
No, and returning to the source is that complete understanding. What Steve is shaking his finger. What Steve?
Just really quickly, we have to bring in, I like to bring in, when we talk about returning to source and these cycles, Vico, you know, and as Alan is Finnegan's Wake guy, we have to talk about Vico and the 4 stages of return, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, but it is about cycles, but there's always a spiral. It's not just a return, like I think Elizabeth said.
It just occurred to me, that, I mean, the world is divided into people who've seen this and not seen
Right.
this. But considering we're talking about UFOs, like who amongst us has seen them and not seen them? It's just interesting.
Oh, well,
to me.
I've seen them.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
Please, I hope you
Well,
will.
we're talking about UFOs or fairies.
Yes, good
That's
point.
right.
One of my favorite lines from one of my favorite nutty thinkers,
Who
the
is?
Zen master among Catholic thinkers named G.K. Chesterton,
Ah,
whom Alan Watts has a whole nice little riff on.
I love Alan Watts. Yeah.
Well, Alan Watts has a whole podcast on G.K. Chesterton.
Mhm.
Be that as it may,
Mhm.
G.K. Chesterton, one of my favorite lines from him in his book called Orthodoxy, in the chapter called The Ethics of Fairyland, says, it's a dreadful thing to say that Mr. W.B.H. does not understand fairyland.
No.
And yet I say it. He's too clever an Irishman to understand fairyland. It takes a simple yokel like myself who gapes and grins and does what he's told to understand fairyland.
I love that.
I do too.
I think Steve would enjoy that too,
Beautiful.
being, a friend of Alan Watts
Very
and
nice.
living on Alan Watts's boat.
Nice.
Right, Steve? I'm surprised.
But
Steve. Go
I'm
ahead.
just curious. I was just,
Go
I'm
ahead.
very
Go
curious.
ahead, do that.
Well, I'm curious
Yeah.
in people's personal experiences. and-
About ET, you've
Well,
never
no,
seen?
no.
You've seen them.
I have, but I, for instance, has Michael or Elizabeth or Tony or Malachi, has anybody seen the ships in the sky, the ships right in front of them? with the
I
flashing
have.
lights?
I'm raising my hand.
Tony?
Tell us, Alan, please.
No, for me, even when I was seeing them, it's like, is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
There is a disconnect because it's so far out of this realm. There's a little fairy, Steve.
Contextualize us, please. Tell us when
Yeah.
and what you saw.
Well, I was with this guy who lives right down the street here on 85th, Mark Brinkerhoff, and he says, I think they're here. And I said, what are you talking about? It goes, look up. And way up there was these little silver discs in the sky. This was during the day in downtown Manhattan.
When was that?
This was about 5 summers ago. I was in downtown and it's like, yeah, there were things up there. It's like, wow, how come no one is noticing this? How come we're the only?
Can I
Yeah.
suggest a reason?
Sure.
The word darshan in Sanskrit,
Hmm.
apparently, according to my long-lost cousin, Eddie Stern.
I know Eddie.
He's not actually my cousin, but he is Eddie Stern and I'm Tony Stern, so
Okay.
I'm calling him my cousin. He says that darshan literally means where a perfect balance between the subjective and the objective, which is to say, you have to bring certain subjectivity to the table to see
Yes.
this supposedly
It has to
objective.
resonate in you for you to see it.
That's good.
At the very
Antonio,
least,
yes.
that's the beginning of the discussion. The end of the
Yeah.
discussion takes us to fairyland, to
I agree.
Wonderland, which is to say, my daughter, Marguerite, was in a medieval mystery play at Pitzer College / Pomona College. And she strummed all through it the following lines from the rock band Durer, D-U-H-R-E-R, which go like this. We begin at the end and we end in the middle. Bit by bit we mend. Now wrap your head and heart around that one, and then we can all go to
Sounds very Joycean, doesn't it, Steve?
Were we going into Heidegger territory there with the Dasein stuff?
No,
I
but
mean, I was laughing. When we were
maybe,
going into-
but the fairy stuff does bring up the idea that what we used to call fairies, maybe we're calling ETs. Does that resonate with you?
We haven't heard from
all moments of the unknown.
Yes.
They're all
Yes.
hints of the unknown.
It is the unknown.
T.S. Eliot says,
hints.
all the rest is hints followed by guesses.
Yeah.
These are hints.
Hints.
Oh, I
But-
like that quote.
When
Where,
you say
However-
he leads, and all of them lead to incarnation, which is what
where does he say
four
that?
quartets, last
Hints
third or
follows.
fourth, hints followed by guesses.
I love
He
that.
then goes ahead and says the hint half guess is incarnation, which is what Sri Aurobindo was. In other words, the supramental.
Yes.
Yes, and that's what I feel we're heading to. Hopefully, you possibly as a
That's all-
culture,
that's where
as
we
a
are.
society. That's
Where we
the
are.
Always
supramental
been there.
is coming online. Does
It's
that?
coming
Well,
online
that's
if
an
we
interesting
try not too
point.
hard to name it or understand it.
Yes.
Well,
Because it's like the Wagner
Yeah.
opera Lohengrin. The moment
You hit-
you try to name the guy you just made love with, he is a incorrect.
You're hitting all of Steve's favorite people, Wagner, Alan Watts. How's that? Steve, I got a friend for you here.
I just wanted to ask, because there are a few people on here who haven't spoken
That's right,
for a
Mike-
while. Michael,
Michael.
and then Marla.
Well, I
and-
wanted to ask Steve to speak a little bit more about, coagulate and dissolve and
yeah,
fluidity,
I
and
noticed that too.
your sense of that. And when you all earlier talking about J.G. Bennett,
Did I just jump in and say that you said something about fairies might be ETs?
Yes.
There's a lot of terrestrial life that most people aren't aware of, including
Yes.
fairies. And lots of little people and underground people and orbs. And, there's a lot of sentient life here that most people don't perceive through our normal five senses, but there are people who do.
Yes,
Actually, Elizabeth, it's just so wonderful to have you as part of this conversation, because as much as we can go into all this speak of realms, I'm always thinking the same as you. Like, we don't even understand, most of us, what a rock is, or a blade of grass, or the
Amen,
insect
sister.
life.
Amen.
And
sister.
there is so much about organic biological life, the systems, the patterns, that
That's
to
true.
me is the great mystery to be
Looked at from here.
So, I always know that they're locked up. When we started with the Indian, then God, you locked up with Henrietta.
Oh,
What?
she froze up for a second. I'll put this down.
Okay.
Okay. But anyway, say that again.
Well, no, oh, sorry, it's just
No,
you
no.
were going out of frame.
No,
I
it's
wanted
okay.
you to be
I'm in
frame.
frame. I'm in
We
frame.
mustn't lose Alan.
I was
No,
just.
so I just love to hear from you, Elizabeth, because what I hear from you is this sort of natural, or as Antonio likes to say, entanglement with the organic life right here. And you just made a very good point. That's nice to
Right.
bring to this conversation.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
well,
absolutely.
As we can
All that-
talk about all
all
these
that-
things.
All that
Wait, Steve,
organic,
1 second.
I want
all
to jump in again.
Go
all
ahead.
that
Jump in again
organic
and
life,
say,
Wait,
I give up.
Wait, Steve, 1 second, Steve.
I muted him. Go ahead, Elizabeth. Go ahead.
Okay, I
Elizabeth,
just want to
yes,
say
go
all that organic life exists on that whole keyboard of matter, energy, spirit. And all of it in nature is in communion with itself, with all parts of itself, just how our cells have to be in communion with each other to keep us alive.
Yes.
So there's no, when a UFO disappears, it's simply sliding up the keyboard into the non-physical part of the keyboard so that we can't shoot it down, because when it comes into the material, it's vulnerable to us. And we need to recognize that all nature is on this entire keyboard, and it's both terrestrial and cosmic. So I do have to go now. I've done my 90 minutes here.
Okay, no, thank you, Elizabeth. Can we do a show with just you and your
Yes.
theories? I'll email to you. And
Whatever you want. I'm in service, Alan.
Okay.
So just let me know.
thanks so much for joining us, and also send me that digital copy, okay?
We'll do it right now. Okay.
Thanks so
you.
much.
Bye.
And Marla, Steve will get to you in a second. Marla, what do you think about that spectrum that Elizabeth was talking about of
I'm
these
so
other beings?
I want to hear about.
I'm so grateful to Elizabeth because this is a huge piece, I think, that we're really missing. You know, like we'll often say we love trees, but, you know, that's kind of as far as it goes, or we love our dog or we love our horse. But, you know, we can communicate. And I used to have my students do this all of the time. Energy contains information. So all you have to do is connect with the energy and however your system works, right? If you see or hear or feel or know, doesn't matter. You can get information and in fact have a conversation. So I happen to be a huge fan of dogs, and I've talked to a lot of dogs and cats and other pets and animals and plant life. But I have to tell you that these pets that I talk to are so highly intelligent. They're so tuned in. We really, and this is what I thank Elizabeth for, we do them a disservice when we think they're so smart if they learn how to sit. I mean, they're so far advanced, both in brain and intelligence, but also, I think, very often in spirit.
There's Steve and his dog, Lily.
Oh, cute.
Lily. Yeah.
Maybe Mother wants to speak to the dog.
But, you know, there's a huge range here that we have no idea. And go ahead, Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
So we started talking with the Indian stuff, and I just want to bring in the divas. And I always like when I bring in the divas, I like to bring in Findhorn. But I also want to bring in the kobolds, the sylphs, and the 4 elemental spirits, and then talk about, as we talk about ETs, we have those 4 elemental spirits which correspond to earth, fire, air, and water, but we also have the quintessence. And now I will suppose that the quintessence is this new alien energy that is entering into the visible, perceivable spectrum. So the four elves, sylphs, gnomes, kobolds, but we have this 5th element, the quintessence, as the alien intersection, and divas.
Go ahead. Yes.
Can I? And so, Steve, thanks for that. I just want to jump back to Michael's question because actually it wasn't. We didn't. Yeah, it wasn't answered. And it was rhetorical. Yeah. So, Michael, you were talking about the dissolve and coagulate, which you picked up on from Steve's notes, and we'd love to hear
fluidity, which he thought was important enough, so I could have my own assumptions about it. But I would like to hear from him the importance of that, and then also he mentioned someone who I really rarely ever hear mentioned, who's J.G. Bennett, who wrote this 3-volume. Among his work was Oxford University Press. 3-volume series that has information that is he was a British mathematician that was so important, I think, for structures for humankind to think about systems. And you know, we talk on a personal level about dogs and other intelligences, which I'm fine with, and I don't want to get political, but I'm just so concerned that on our planet we're killing off the oceans. We're just, you know, the huge natural systems that sustain life and have sustained it, and you know that we have symbiotic relationship with, you know, not only on the physical level but just I think also on the spiritual energetic level, you know, that they bring silence, they bring oxygen, and it's you know, I don't know what we do to, you know, heal this planet or get people on the planet to understand that it's more than 2/3 water, the oceans, and we're letting that be killed off. I mean, does that make any sense? But no one talks about that. And
but we should talk about
Steve, you know, could you invoke some higher forces here while we're here to, you know, bring some awakening consciousness to heal this planet and to understand, which Steve was mentioning, J.G. Bennett, who understands the importance of not only dealing on the little issues, but that there's critical big systems that have to be protected on the planet, or the planet's going to be in trouble.
I just did a talk on Subhan's web thing about social responsibility and cosmic responsibility, you know, and I'll just go
Love
into,
this.
okay, I'll go into dissolve and coagulate really, really quick. It's about circulation. I use the Yeatsian Gaias as a really, Yeatsian Gaias from the Vision, his book of Vision, which was a channel book from his wife, is really important. I recommend to really people.
You're talking about William Butler Yeats now, or you?
Yes,
The
yes.
one that Chester didn't put down.
Okay.
And
And,
the vision, yeah.
But dissolve and coagulate is an alchemical thing. It's about circulation. You know what I mean? We really have to realize that these things circulate, not getting stopped in one certain, in a Gurdjieffian terms, one eye. You know, so keep those masks fluid, keep them moving around, and then discover what's behind those.
Right. Mass.
You pull
Too high a point to.
on. Say you're a holy guardian angel, and I'm sure Krishnamurti had something to say about that.
It's very deep, this discussion, and lots of points. And the thing that I think we could bring it back into is what is just the nature of consciousness. How fluid is that? How concrete, how centered, how transmutable is the every moment into consciousness. And Tony.
Tony and Antonio.
What about us?
Well, what do you
And-
do with this thing called awareness and consciousness?
And
How do you
Antonio.
define it? How do you define it?
You don't?
You don't define it.
Well,
or
you
confine it.
define it or confine it at your risk. You can try, but if it's really, if you know the poem "The Hound of Heaven" by Francis Thompson,
No.
that describes what happens if you try to escape it in any way.
Uh-huh.
Now, the divine forces and even the demonic forces that they recruit to go after you are gentle for a period, and then as Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj and I Am That makes clear, it will then at a certain point lose patience and go after you.
Well,
A little like God goes after Moses.
Why
and
do
tries to
these
kill him.
forces go after people?
Because people are hanging on to the wrong stupid things, and that's why. It's a little like in the Conference of the Birds by Attar, strongly recommended. Somebody's calling out, one of the many vignettes in it, it's calling out saying, "Let go of your beard, you're gonna drown." And he's drowning, holding onto his beard. And the guy says, "I'm not holding on to my beard." And the guy on the shore says, "Well, whatever the fuck you're holding on to, let go of it." You didn't say, I'm embellishing a little bit.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, the divine forces say, whatever the fuck you're holding on to,
Let go.
that's over. No, not only let go. That's been told all of us who have been on this
Right.
path
Yeah.
repeatedly, endlessly.
Yeah.
At a certain point, it's beyond let go. We're going to make you let go now, whether you like it or not. And
Right.
that's sometimes called death, by the way.
Right.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
As
moving
one-
on.
Or you don't want to let go. Sorry, game over.
Right.
Checkmate.
Right.
You have
So you
run
have
out
to
of
constantly be letting go.
time. Well, that's a good.
Well, that's what the Zen people say.
Well, the Zen people say a lot of things,
All right.
but
So
one
the
of
letting go, Alan, the letting go is a categorization. I believe that it's circulation. Allow the energy to circulate. Letting go is a subset of circulation.
okay. So William Blake puts it well. He says, "He who binds himself or she to a joy does the winged life destroy.
Ah.
But he who kisses the joy as it flies, lives in eternity sunrise."
That is nice. William Blake, what a master he was, right? I love all these literary associations,
Yes,
don't you?
you've been looking. I do.
Well,
So, Alan, Blake has been pruned out of the narrative. you know? And this is what something that's really irks me is when certain things get pruned out of the narrative. Wilhelm Reich's UFO experiences have been pruned out of the narrative. We need to open up the narrative, which we do here, I believe. You too, Marla. Thank you for all what you're doing. And but we need to keep the narrative circulating, not get locked down into Stephen Greer saying, hey, if you pay $5,000, I'll show you a UFO. Let's
That's
not go
right.
there. Let's
That's-
circulate. Let's keep the minds open. Let's not and not have the narrative be defined for us by William Elizondo.
I agree. That's why we're doing this, because there's people like this bringing all these sources, Blake and Yates and Joyce and Marla
Elliot.
and Elliot. Marla, what were you going to say? Unmute, Marla.
Unmute.
We can't hear
Okay.
you, Marla.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a very quick comment to Steve. What you're talking about too is simple biology as well, right?
Which part? Which part was simple biology?
The
Circulation.
fluidity and
Yeah, Marla, like Michael was talking about with Bennett. Bennett's really, because Bennett was doing again the personal and the cosmic. Let's not categorize that circulation into any category. Let's see it as the broader picture.
I love this. I love it.
Thank you, Marla.
Right. So why even call it circulation then, Steve?
Call it what you will, Alan, but call it.
Exactly.
I mean, the other thing that Steve mentioned on another,
Yeah.
on another level, like Wilhelm Reich, he can be dismissed, or Oregon box, or these energies, okay, whatever one's view on this is, but he wrote this other book that was so important, and it's called The Sexual History of the Russian Revolution. And it just shows the way how things changed when the sexual energy became repressed and shut down. And I think that that's so indicative too of, what goes on in modern societies. And that becomes, unfashionable now to say with the way people are,
Right. And when
viewing
we were
sexuality.
When we were speaking about Reich before, about electromagnetic spectrum before, remember that Reich was supposing a different sort of energy. We had the Odic energy, the orgone energy, the Vril energy, which is really, really important to theosophy. Bulwer-Lytton. Nobody pays attention to
A
Bulwer-Lytton.
great book. My God,
Thank you, Michael.
Zanoni, my gosh.
Oh,
Zanoni.
Michael's the only person here, probably within 200 miles, that knows Boa-Linton like you do, Steve.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
my-
I've been to his archives, and everybody knows that Bulwer-Lytton, nobody knows that Bulwer-Lytton worked with Eliphas Levi, who was the one who was a precursor to theosophy, who invented ceremonial magic and brought in this hidden masters, cloud upon the sanctuary stuff. So yeah,
I'd love Steve someday to do, and maybe Tony, a movie of Zanoni. Zanoni is this amazing out of print novel written by Bulwer-Lytton.
Let's do
Marla,
it.
do you have any ideas from the higher realms how to bring forward these great gems of spiritual wisdom
You
that
mentioned
really
Zanoni.
into the planet, into the
Zamoni. Let's do a film, Antonio, on Zamoni.
And by the way, Steve,
do it.
I'm guessing you know the novels of Charles Williams then.
Steve.
One of the Inklings, one of the older Inklings.
Go ahead.
Charles Williams, close associate of Evelyn Underhill and teacher of, along with Tagore, and also one of the elder Inklings whom Tolkien and C.S. Lewis both revered.
Oh yeah, him. I know of him. Yeah.
And occultist extraordinaire, and
But late in the history.
what?
Later in the history then, like when does he come? Like what year? 50s, 40s?
Well, the earlier in the history is the mother lode of Christian fantasy, George MacDonald.
Was that C.S. Lewis area too? It was kind of
C.S. Lewis and Chesterton, who was older than Lewis, both revered, along with all the other Inklings, Tolkien, revered George MacDonald, who was who was a good friend of Mark Twain's et al., and who was the first Christian fantasy writer. Lewis Carroll was his only direct disciple.
Wow.
Which is to say, the only reason, or one of the only reasons, Lewis Carroll published Alice in Wonderland is that George MacDonald's daughters begged him.
Wow.
to
I love this
How come you've
literary
never heard of
history
him?
that this is occult literary history that is
That's
so
why we have
influential.
to again the precursors and trace things back. Who was?
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. If we're talking about, I'm a huge fan of Arthur Machen and Algernon Blackwood, the Golden Dawn writers from the 1900s. Algernon Blackwood went on to be a Gurdjieff guy, but Algernon Blackwood also knew Krishnamurti, I think. Mackin was a Holy Grail guy, Arthur Mackin. They were all in the Golden Dawn with Yeats and
Right.
Crowley and Bram Stoker. So yeah, tracing this stuff back is really important and putting the context to how we think today.
By the way,
Yes.
one
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
How well do you know A.E. Russell?
I know of A. Russell. I've read some of it.
A.E. was a devout Christian
This is good.
who tried his best to school Yeats and was clearly, even though he's considered himself a misty mystic, was actually trying to school Yeats to be less of a misty mystic.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, now, was Boa Lytton the guy who influenced Bram Stoker, the Dracula guy?
Well, Bulwer Lytton probably influenced everybody. Bulwer Lytton was the largest selling writer than Charles Dickens, told Charles Dickens how to end Great Expectations, was the most widely read person. And when I went to Westminster Abbey to visit his grave, they didn't even know where it was. And they had to get one of the elder people to tell me, to show it to me. I've also seen Bulwer Lytton's archives at Nebworth in England, and those are interesting. But Bulwer Lytton also influenced Lovecraft.
Lovecraft.
And then Lovecraft was influenced by Arthur Machen, Russell, Bulwer Lytton. We get A.E. Russell. They're all Golden Dawn people, which, we could argue where the Golden Dawn theosophy crossed over, what Blavatsky, Nicholas Roerich, start building this web. Again, it's about building not a matrix, but a tapestry, which takes us back to fucking Melville and Moby Dick. Thank
How
you.
does it get, first of all, why do you call him fucking Melville? Second of all, why does it take us back to him?
Because the warp and the weft, and in Moby Dick, one of which I think is earlier than all of them. Do the history, do the math. I'm not going to date Melville at the moment in Moby Dick, but Moby Dick is about the tapestry. It's about and I always go back to Lamont Young's Dream House down on Church Street as this kind of matrix of frequency.
Moby Dick, 1851, Steve.
Okay, contemporary Bulwer Lytton. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. So, who influenced the Dracula goth series? Was that Boa Lytton? That kind of no, before Lovecraft. He's talking about the early 1800s.
Bulwer Lytton was 1840s on.
1840s. Was that gothic in a way? Was that?
Oh yeah, sure. It was a dark and stormy night, is what Bulwer Lytton has been.
Boa Lytton invented the term. It was a dark and stormy.
was also friends with
Boa Lytton,
which gets very interesting.
Yes,
That's
it. Now it's cliche, but that's him.
Did he hang out a lot in Bermuda and drink those good?
No, he hung out in London where there was dark and stormy nights, I think. Right? Right.
Constantly.
That I love.
Right.
And, ginger beer.
But what were you saying, Steve? What? Wait, you unmuted. Unmute.
I was
Because
asking Mala to maybe give us a message from all this.
from Boa Lytton, you want it?
No,
Go ahead.
in general, Mala.
Well, you know what I would really love to do is just say a blessing.
Yes.
Because I think that to speak to everything you've said, which, God, this evening is amazing. I mean, my heart and my brain are singing. And all these literary references, my God, you can't imagine. I thank each one of you so much. And the cultural the cultural references and the things I've learned spiritually, I just would like to say that because I didn't have teachers and because I'm an experiential kind of person, I just went on my own. So I've been taking pages of notes.
Wow.
Thank
Tonight.
one of you so much. Yeah, tonight,
Wow.
pages of notes. I hope everybody else has too.
This is how Steve takes notes.
Yeah, let's see Steve's notes because they're
Those are
always good.
Those are Steve's notes, Marla. I guess yours may be a little more organized.
I was wondering. Interesting. So,
Yeah.
Michael, when you asked the question,
She's so
I think information is huge.
yeah.
And I think that each one of us, if we can open to whatever we want to call it, inner or outer information in whatever form, it is probably our key. Then all we have to do is modify our behavior or alter our behavior based on the information. And that I guess is, I don't know, one person at a time. I don't know. I volunteer.
That's the question, not just one person at a time. That's the question for the higher. How do we bring this in, given that there's, some sense of urgency for the planet? We can still on one level just be concerned with our own life, our happiness, our relationships, like we're having a good time tonight. But if we're going to have something happen on the planet, for me, being someone who's a connector, who is part of the Harvard world, I have access or run into people who are, leaders in finance or in government or other places. But I can't have this kind of conversation, with someone who is, who I met and having a conversation with. He's, it was Obama's head of the national security, or, there are people. How do we bring some wisdom in also to the groups of people who run, the institutions that run the planet?
Why is the wisdom not in those palaces? Is it not in those, is it absent from those places?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, it is absent, but those places aren't based on wisdom. They're based on popularity. And power
and money,
and superficiality. So you can't expect to have those conversations there. You need to.
We do have to bring in the idea of parapolitics. The idea that politics is influenced by the occult. Like I said, Boba Lytton's good friend was Disraeli. We can always trace these things back.
And he was a member of the parliament himself.
Yeah.
Were you aware?
Right. So I like what you're saying, though, Michael. I think it's really important because, and like Marla said, we can jump off into these things, but Marla wants to give a blessing, which I think is great.
Oh yeah, please, Marla,
needs to ground us. And Michael, you're talking about the other spectrum too. We're all trying to incorporate. How do we circulate the spiritual energy into the political energy and other circulations? How do we do that? Because what's happening has been a stagnation. We've allowed the narrative to be concretized. And so I like both your points, Michael and Marla, and I'll wait for your blessing, Marla. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's very simple, and I'm basing it on everything that you've all talked about tonight. And I'm just going to say, I think it's important. Blessing and energy going out. And then sometime, Michael, I would love to be on here again and to address this subject more thoroughly, and I would love to get more messages. I will tell you that a few years ago, I saw doctors on the other side frantically working. Frantically in teams. I can't tell you the focus and the speed with which they were working, and trying to come up with solutions. And to get them down to us, I felt like, through information, which is why I brought up the information. And I didn't understand why they were so frantic. But now I think, given COVID, this may have been one reason why. Although I will say about COVID, I did get messages from people who were alive, are over there. They both happened to be older men when they crossed over. So I don't know if it was kind of still their human perspective, but what they told me last year is that there was confusion at the border. There were so many people who were dying who didn't expect to die, not only in their personality, but also in the little bit higher self as well. Like, this was not in the plan. This was not what I intended at a higher level. So that dissipated, that they got organized. So I don't know how true that was. That was just for
makes sense. It really does. Marla, it really makes sense. It really makes sense.
Well,
so
carry on, Marla. Carry on.
Yeah.
Shall I say the blessing?
Yeah.
And then can we continue this discussion?
I will continue.
Begging.
And you-
at the end.
And you could go deeper if you want as well.
Well, no, she means just continue it next week. But
No, or continue it to
what
the
I wanted to ask was, did Antonio or Tony want to interject on
Well,
this vision from Michael to Marla? Yeah.
You go ahead.
And then Tony.
Power and
Yeah.
and wisdom. If we realize that the priestly class has usually been the power class, you yourself, Michael, Tony here, you went to Harvard, right?
Right.
You are the elite.
Yeah.
You are the intellectual elite. Where do you live? You live in New York, right? Alan lives in New York. Tony lives in New York. What is New York in the great scale? It's the modern day Alexandria.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
modern day
That's right.
epicenter of the power. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
You are the elite if you look at it in reality.
Yeah.
And after you see the founding stone, the founding rock, there's a painting of the
That's a good
Capitol
point.
Hill. What is George Washington wearing? What are the people next to him wearing?
What?
Masonic regalia.
Ah,
The whole design of New York City is Masonic. Now tell me again that the spirituality is not in the epicenter of power,
Yeah.
but spirituality. Spirituality. But spirituality has always been the core of power. If you are a Pharaoh's advisor, the great priest, and you know, because you've done the calculation, because you have nothing better to do than looking at the stars while there is a working class, you've been looking at the class, you can't predict when there's going to be an eclipse. The power that it brings you, when there's somebody next to you doing the count, and you say, on the count of 3, I'm going to make the sun go dark. How many instances do we see of that in the Bible? There is some access to knowledge that is kept from us pedestrians.
it's good.
And it happens here. We cannot, it'd be very naive of us to believe that there is no knowledge of these things in the center of power. Look at the moon.
Yeah.
No, that's great,
That
Antonio.
is-
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks,
Thank you. That's
Antonio.
initiation and levels of consciousness.
Exactly.
And the power class, the politicians have no idea, or maybe the ones that are really manipulating do. So that's something else. But
The power behind the power.
Yeah.
right, right.
Yes.
Those are the ones that know it, but
Yeah.
not the guys up front.
Yeah. Exactly.
Not the puppet.
the puppets.
Not the we don't
Hard
see
to
the
say
puppet.
who's
already not
Mar-
your
Hard to
representative.
say who's the puppet
and who's the puppet
There's
master?
only one puppet master.
Oh, really?
Hashem.
Okay, well, that's a whole other. Wait, Marla, what you want to do your blessing? You had something to
Yeah,
say?
because-
Yeah, but I have something to say too, if you don't mind.
Yes. Oh,
And I
please.
got this message for each one of you and everybody who's listening. I think, Michael, to address your point, it is probably crucial that Michael and the rest of you become leaders, right? In your spheres.
Yeah.
And I want to just give a real world example, if you don't mind. So I volunteer at one of the largest dog rescues in the world. It is the largest single breed rescue in the world. And it breaks my heart all of the time. Plus that I am the worst dog walker in the entire rescue. But this is it's my only claim to fame, the worst dog walker. They give me an A+ for trying. Anyway, here is the point. It's one dog at a time. This rescue takes on medical issues. It is this entire team working to get one dog through the funnel. However, and this is the inspiring part. No, this rescue was started by a woman in 2002, and she has rescued over 15,000 dogs.
Wow.
One at a
Yeah.
time, though. One at
Okay?
a time.
I mean, this is a huge impact. And then someone said to me, think of all the love that has gone with each one of those dogs to the families. And
Amen.
then it just extrapolates out, right? So I have been very shy, as Henrietta knows, about coming out to the public. As Alan knows, these are my very first YouTubes. I think I'm so brave, but I'm just kidding about that because it all feels very natural. But I understand that there is criticism. I receive a lot of criticism for what I do. There's some negativity. There's
What
a
can
lot.
they criticize you for? You're
You're being a
perfect.
kook.
No, but what could you? No, I mean, no,
Thank
you're
you.
good. No, you're
No,
good at
for
what
my
you do.
work.
And
For my
Steve knows
work.
mediumship, so Steve likes you. You're good.
You're
Mola,
Okay, go ahead.
Mola, just
for a Western
I
skeptic.
think we all need to also say, Mola, for you too, I would never do a YouTube before I met Alan. So,
I
so
know
really,
it.
Alan, you know that.
I
Alan asked me
know
for
it.
2
Alan
years.
gets everyone going.
That
Well,
is absolutely true. And Alan pushes me and I let him.
I want you to expand your powers, Marla. There's more to reality that you can tap into. Yes.
I know you're right, and I'm going to do it, Alan.
Okay, we're waiting, but go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, I think that we each need to be leaders in our group. I'm never going to be whatever. Just be leaders in your group. Be brave. Be courageous. Now is the time. Okay, so we're going to get some negativity and some criticism. Whatever. We have Alan for support.
Actually, the magical word, Mola, is to dare.
Leaders.
Dare. To
What's
dare.
that? Say that?
Leaders.
To dare.
To dare is the highest wisdom.
Leaders.
Right. To dare. It's one of the Sphinx, right?
So Marla, let's have the blessing. We're
Okay, I'm
waiting.
going to give it to you. It's so simple and easy. And I'm
Okay.
asking everyone to say it to themselves and maybe to keep saying it.
Okay. Wait, Steve, you had something to say before Marla? Oh, you're just holding up the energy. You're holding up the energy. Okay, Steve's ready.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
fantastic. Thank you. All right. May we come to feel, know, understand, and experience personal, earthly, and cosmic connections.
Say it again.
Can you, Tony wants you to say it again. Do you mind?
Okay, I don't mind. And it's based on, it's not a channeling, it's based on everything that you brilliant people said. May we come to feel, know, understand, and experience the personal, earthly, and cosmic connections.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a step forward, Michael, right?
Maybe.
Yes, yes.
Well-
And Steve, do you want to bring your energy in to amplify it?
What's
Yes,
that?
Steve.
Steve, can I-
I actually know, Michael, but thank you for asking. I will. Okay, I'll go.
Steve has some talent.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mola. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Henrietta.
May I add one?
Everyone, I loved it.
Tony wants to add one of
Yes,
his
Tony.
karmic shamanic blessings. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, I'm going to repeat. I'm going to channel Blake again.
Okay, love Blake. We all love Blake.
Well, I'm going to channel two. I'm going to channel three Brits.
Okay, here's another one right here. No,
Well, I'm looking at her, and that suffices. For the
right.
time.
Okay.
First of all, Chesterton. It takes a simple yokel like
I like
a simple child who gapes and grins and does what he or she is told to appreciate any of the things we're talking about. That's
Yes.
number one. Number two, T.S. Eliot. The gift half guessed, the hint half understood is incarnation.
Mm.
Third,
Wait, did you get that, Marla? That is so key. I mean, I know you get, but I'm trying to just absorb
Who's
it.
that?
That's
Blake.
Blake.
ladies,
The, say that again, the gift. I'm having a deja vu
okay,
right
let me
now.
Let me back up and say, to communicate with to communicate with Mars, which he says shortly before that, to communicate with anyone outside of this planet, to
Simple.
understand the horoscope, and goes on, are the usual pastimes of the press and distractions of the press.
Of the press.
Of the press.
Interesting.
And he goes on to say, but to appreciate the intersection of time with the timeless is the occupation of a saint.
Nice.
And no occupation either, a lifetime of devotion, prayer, observance, and self-sacrifice.
I love that.
The gift half understood.
This is Eliot now.
And then there, yes, T.S. Eliot, 4 quartets. I think his 3rd quartet or his 4th quartet, one or the other. I think it's the 3rd. The rest is hints and guesses. The gift half understood, the hint half guessed is incarnation.
I love that. That
So
is
last
so
but not
deep.
least, he or she who binds himself or herself to a joy does the winged life destroy. But he or she who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity sunrise.
He knew something, that guy.
Love that.
It was like a
They all knew
Buddhist kind.
something by letting go of wanting to know anything.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's an incredible mystical tradition within English literature that you never hear about in college. And it's so deep. Tennyson, Wadsworth, Yeats, but Joyce was sort of a mystic. But
Well,
even
also
the great
writers like
poet.
Hardy, Thomas Hardy.
Yeah, all these, they had this mystical undertone that, modern day academia has just flushed down the toilet.
Why? The question is why. The question.
Well, because the paradigm is to be mental and scientific and let go of the mystical. My English teacher in high school didn't even know why the poets were called transcendental. Someone said, did it have anything to do with transcendental meditation? They said, no. And of course it does. It's transcendental. Emerson and Thoreau and Whitman and even William James. These were
Why are they
mystics.
bleeding the spirituality out of people? That's the
Why?
question.
Why? Because
they're models.
Maybe instead of the spirituality wishing us to have spirituality in government, we should wish to have spirituality in education.
right. Like your
That's a
friend.
really good point.
Who was the friend who wrote I just met a
You know
woman
what?
who wrote a book called The Soul for Education. Yeah, Marla. What were you saying?
I think that I don't know that I always have, I don't know that I can blame so much. I mean,
I'm
Antonio,
blaming them. Yeah.
you could be completely 100% right. But don't we also have to say that our school system is so incredibly old and our teachers are under such strain and they were educated in this.
It's the paradigm in which we live in, it's the paradigm where we swept spirituality out from everyday life.
Well, Alan is absolutely correct. It's to the point where you were saying, Marla, our current educational system was created with the birth of the Industrial Revolution for the sole purpose of making machines.
Right.
Monkeys who can
Right.
operate
That's
level.
good.
It's a little overstated, but we
No, I agree.
The sole
Stand in
purpose, the
line.
sole
yeah,
purpose.
No.
Well,
The main purpose,
putting
or
them
one of the
into
main
the-
purposes.
It also modeled
It was the sole
a kind of
purpose.
Christian education, modern day schooling, and then we just threw the Christianity out, which is fine, but there was nothing to replace it with, so that's the model of today's education. And, I think these other schools like Waldorf and what's the other one? Steiner schools have been trying to break that model. And Steiner was an incredible, no one even knows Steiner's work. He was a spiritual genius.
Everyone's overstating their cases. Can we be a little more modern?
But there's not many people that know Steiner.
By the way, there's not a lot of people in this recent generation that know the Beatles, for God's
Well,
sake.
that's true. Or even Frank Sinatra. Do you know that?
I do know
You
that.
ask someone under 30 if they heard of Frank Sinatra, they will have no
Steiner,
idea.
Let's start with the Beatles. Beatles. With
No, let's
John
go back.
Sebastian,
Let's
with
go back to Elvis.
Donovan. Well,
The
forget
wall of
Elvis. How about
existence.
Donovan, who was real mystic?
Sort of, yeah.
He was.
Yeah,
Well, I know I meant once, but yeah.
Well,
But the
you know,
Beatles-
I would like to suggest a question for next
Yes,
time.
Marla, yes.
And that is to really discuss the word incarnation, because
Yeah.
Alan, you know that I'm all about, one of my frustrations in one place that I think we really need to move forward is language. We don't have a cohesive language for our current spirituality, our current psychic abilities, our you name it. So, for example, I was talking to someone the other day and I said, what do you think is the difference between psychic and intuition? And she
Right.
said, well, I don't know, but they're different. So I'm just giving a little example. So I would love to discuss what incarnation means to everybody. I think that's a
Well, that is a word I love using, because don't you think it's being ensouled? Don't you think it's the life force spirit in the body, in the carne, in the meat?
By the
I
way,
would love to discuss it next time. I'm begging for that to be one of the
Oh,
questions.
let's talk about, wait, Tony had something to say.
if we really fully understood it, we'd be Jesus Christ.
No, I don't
Yes,
think so.
Yes.
I
I'm
think
just talking about definition. That's all I'm talking
You
about.
can't be.
definition.
I agree with that.
Good luck with
We're
that.
understanding it now. We're
Are we?
understanding,
Oh,
yeah.
we've
You know
talked
what
a lot-
makes someone incarnate and disincarnate?
No.
We've talked a
Well,
lot.
take a look at a dead body.
Just,
We've-
yeah,
we've
I
talked
think
about-
we're taking a look at a lot of dead bodies.
Okay,
Like,
was that incarnation?
I have
No.
no idea.
Well,
There's a
it's not,
Zen, there's a Zen poem where the Zen master goes up to the casket and goes, alive or dead, and knocks on it.
or
Don't
is that,
tell me you understand.
or
it.
is
Don't
that
even tell me-
Schrodinger's cat you're talking about?
Yes, we are, and you understand.
Thank you for that, Alan.
I don't understand. But
Yeah,
there
we
is
know
a
about
difference
Schrodinger's cat.
between,
That's beyond my-
there-
that's beyond my page.
there is a
And I
difference
do that.
between alive and dead. Forget the Zen master.
And you understand it.
I don't, it's not about understanding.
It's probably
Alan,
about-
I've seen dead bodies and I've
Eh?
seen live
And
bodies.
by the
So
way,
there's a
every time-
difference.
Can we have Stephen? Stephen wants to say
Oh,
something.
Stephen, yes. You have a follower there, Steve. Yes, go ahead.
Two things. One, there's a spectrum between living and dead.
Okay,
What?
a spectrum.
And we have to really see that.
Amen.
The inert matter, like, is a rock dead, and then is an angel alive. You know what I mean? That's just something that. But the other thing is, Marla, we talk a lot about William Burroughs in the past, who rub out the word
William
and
Burroughs.
theories of linguistics and what words mean, language as a virus. So yeah, we do need to define language a little more. And glossalia, that's what's so interesting about glossalia and what they call light language. You know, what does that mean? This fracturing of the verbal vernacular, the common vernacular, and fracturing that, and what bleeds out. Well, you know, erase the word and see what bleeds out. And what Joyce was doing, which was torturing language. What Gurdjieff was doing in Beelzebub's Tales, inventing these new terms, the Kunda buffer, which came up.
Did you
with-
say Joyce was torturing language?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't get that part.
The same way that Schrodinger was torturing the cat.
That's
Hey, you
good.
know, bless them all for trying to get these concepts into words that we can understand.
Well, what's
Well,
the famous
that's-
Eliot line
so-
about the raid on the inarticulate? Say that, Tony. You know, the raid on the
Well,
inarticulate.
he said a lot
Poetry.
in four quartets.
No, poetry is a raid on the inarticulate.
Yes,
Yes, he
I
did.
like that.
You sure?
I
Or on
love
the
that.
articulate. I'm
The
not sure. if
raid
it's
I
on
don't
the
think it was
articulate.
on the articulate or the inarticulate.
One or the other, but it wasn't.
And-
Look,
No,
look
the
at.
raid on the inarticulate.
Or is it the
Actually, it's
articulate?
good both ways, Alan. It's
It
good
is
both
good
ways.
both ways, but he did, Eliot in the four quadrants did say one of those quartets. Four quartets.
He said that in other language.
No, I think he said it.
Trust me,
Look
I know
up,
the
look,
four.
look,
Trust me, I know the four.
look up the raid on the
I
articulate.
am.
Okay. But anyway, Mara, I appreciate you. What is that,
Yeah,
Steve?
thank you, Marla.
Destroy all rational thought. Exactly. This is what we're trying to do with this.
That's not a good idea.
It's only half of it. Antonio doesn't like that,
No,
actually.
neither do
I don't
I.
either.
Well,
Nothing's
I'm right. What's the quote?
T.S. Eliot, so here I am in the middle way, having had,
Yeah.
wow.
Say
I
it, say it.
can't-
Say it.
I'm trying. I'm looking it up. So here I am in the middle way, having had 20 years large. It comes from the same passage that I was thinking about, but I had forgotten that phrase. So here I am in the middle way, having had 20 years largely wasted, the years of l'entrée de guerre.
I don't know what that is.
What a fancy ass pretentious grid.
And what's the rest of it?
The rest of it is, you want me to read it?
Yeah, read it.
Trying to use words, and every attempt is a wholly new start.
Yes, that's
And a
it.
different kind of failure because one has only learned to get the better of words for the thing one no longer has to say.
Oh, that is so good.
love
Did you hear that, Marla? Get the better.
Or the way,
I heard
or
every word.
the way in which one,
Wait, go ahead.
or the way in which one is no longer disposed to say it. And so each venture is a new beginning, a raid on the inarticulate.
Okay.
Good on
Thank
that?
I had to.
With shabby equipment always deteriorating in the general mess of imprecision of feeling, undisciplined squads of emotion, and what there is to conquer by strength and submission. That is a brilliant phrase. And what there is, I repeat it because it's so brilliant. And what there is to conquer by strength and submission has already been discovered once or twice, or several times, by men whom one cannot hope to emulate, or women, by the way.
Right.
But there is no competition. There's only the fight to recover what has been lost and found and lost again and again. And now under conditions that seem propitious. Yes, what she said. But perhaps neither gain nor loss. For us, okay, this is one of his most beautiful statements.
Okay.
For us, there is only the trying, the rest is not our business.
Beautiful. That's
Krishna.
it right there.
That's Krishna. He
Yeah.
says,
That's the blessing.
action is yours. The fruit of action is not yours.
Exactly.
Action is yours, but the fruit of action is not yours.
Krishna.
For us,
Quote
it's
Krishna.
I love
the
that.
trying, and the rest is not our business.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That's.
I say that when I
Hold on,
commit
Alan.
people.
Alan.
Yes. Yes.
Language is a cracked kettle on which we beat out tunes for bears to dance to, while all the time we long to move the stars to pity. Language is a cracked
Who's
kettle.
that?
That's Robert.
Who's that?
What?
Robert?
Gustave
Who wrote-
Robert.
Who?
Gustave Robert?
Flaubert.
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 Oh, Flaubert.
Where?
Can you say that again, Steve? Because
Brevity being the soul of wit, Antonio. Language is a cracked kettle on which we beat out tunes for bears to dance to, while all the time we long to move the stars to pity.
nice.
Flaubert.
Stars to pity.
Cormac
Isn't that
McCarthy
great,
blends
Martha?
into that.
Oh, I am so filled up. I can't tell you. This is like thrilling to me, every bit of it. My brain
This is
so happy.
literary spiritualism. We should start a course on this, and bring in Bennett and Ouspensky and Krishnamurti and Eliot and George,
Emily Dickinson.
and
by
of
the way.
course Emily
And
Dickinson
Emerson.
and Thoreau and Whitman. My favorite line. I'm going to find my favorite line of Whitman from the end of Song of Myself.
I love that.
And
Then I'm going to
and
jump
that's-
off.
Me too.
But I
Oh
wanna
wait,
hear
wait.
it.
Listen to this line.
Hold on.
Listen
I'm
for
waiting.
this line, Paula. Song of, I think this may sum it up. Song of Myself, because, and then we'll all jump off. Song of Myself by Walt Whitman. Song of Myself
I've got
by
one
Walt.
too.
Song of Myself, Whitman. I'm gonna find it. Song and poem by Whitman. And 1 second, it's coming up here. Song of Myself. Okay, here it goes. Song of Myself. I love the first line here. I love the first line of Song of Myself. Where's the first? Sorry. Where is the
Well, you
song?
find it.
Okay.
Michael has such a radiant
Oh,
smile.
I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. That's the opening. But the closing is, Where is the closing?
Every atom that belongs to me belongs to you. Does
Yeah.
anything else need to be said?
Yes,
That
the
sums up
closing the song of
every
myself.
single thing we've talked about tonight.
No, the end
Very
of,
short.
I'm going to just go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
You do your poem.
Okay, I mean, it's not mine, it's Emily Dickinson's. And just
But
because of what
you
we've
have
been
the right
speaking.
accent to speak.
Well,
the
also
right voice.
because of what everything we've been talking about, I feel that Michael, well, I know Steve
Just
knows
say
it,
it, just say it.
by Emily Dickinson. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant.
Oh, I love that one.
Success in circuit lies, too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. As lightning to the children eased, with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind.
Great.
Love that.
Emily and
And
Haley.
I am just going to end this whole thing with the
Emily, I just
Emily's
read it,
great. Everything she ever wrote is just so deep.
but that one is a good one.
Oh, it's
In
great.
the context of
No,
this.
I use that to explain why UFOs don't come out, because you have to
So
show it
do
out
I.
at slant.
Everything.
But I just want to read the end of Song of Myself, Walt Whitman. He
Well,
says,
everything. Great.
he says, I depart as the air. I shake my white locks at the runaway sun. I infuse my flesh in eddies and drift into the lacy jags. And I read this at a friend, Jags, but I read this at a friend's funeral, this at Paula's funeral. And I said, I bequeath myself to the dirt to grow from the grass I love. And if you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. You will hardly know who I am or what I mean, but I shall be good health to you nevertheless, and fiber and filter for your blood. Failing to find me at first, keep encouraged. Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere waiting for you.
Wow.
Isn't that great? I stop somewhere waiting for you. Now, and you know, Emerson and Thoreau didn't know what to do with Whitman. He was the embodiment of everything they were philosophically trying to put into words. But anyway,
It's a bit like Hildegard.
yes. But anyway, Marla, thank you for this. And I think we should continue this literary mysticism.
Yes.
Yes.
Actually,
What?
you know, Alan and I, when we first started talking about this
Yes.
UFO discussion, we could only frame it through a kind of poetic lens, that poetry and metaphor was
Yes.
the only way to be
Mythopoetic.
kind of
Yes,
Yeah.
poetic. Yeah.
mythopoetic is the
Mythopoetic.
only way to like have a guess
Yeah.
or a hint, because otherwise you're just talking rubbish.
Yes.
Right.
You're not getting anywhere,
Yes, that
right?
is the other road. One road is a religious discipline,
Right.
and the other is the arts.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
arts are a key to mystical understanding. You know, Socrates was a mystic. He was not a philosopher. He was a real,
Oh,
I mean,
come on.
no, he
That's
was.
imprecise, bro.
That it's not imprecise.
It is.
It is. Read the apology.
Okay, I'm going. Thanks,
Hey,
everybody.
I'm off
Lots
too.
and lots of
All
fun.
right, next week, let's do it again. Michael, join us. It'll be the same link every week, same link. Thank you, everyone, for online. Thank you, Tony, for your
Michael's
literary
brilliant
input.
smile and radiance, and also what you said
Antonio, thank
earlier.
you. Yeah, Michael, you're
Thank
great.
you.
You add to the comment. And of course, Lily. Is
What's
that
the dog's
Lily?
name? Lily?
Is it Lily?
That's
It's-
Lily.
Lily like Lilydale, right?
There's two
Lily like Lily Dell.
Or is it Lily
Like
Tail?
John Lilly.
Thanks to you,
John
Alan.
Lily, yes.
Thanks to you for having us and for the fantastic closing poem.
Oh, it's my
Yes.
favorite.
Yes.
Emily Dickinson.
And of course, Emily
shout out to
Dickinson is the
Emily
best.
Dickinson and John Ryder is about to walk through the
John
door.
Ryder. Okay.
Oh,
And thank you. So join us
Tony.
next week, everyone,
And
on the YouTube. And
Oh.
Marla, yeah.
Peace
I have
out.
one more closing
Please.
thing. Is
One
that
more closing
we
point,
don't know
John.
what we're doing,
Yeah.
but it's really good to gather, and technology, whatever it is allowing us to do these gatherings, because Michael, Marla, Tony, all of us wouldn't be here if it wasn't
We're
for the
grateful for technology. We're grateful.
We're just
Who are we
allowing.
blaming or giving credit
No
to?
one to,
No,
but and
we're just
Marla,
saying it's nice that we have this device.
thank you
to
for
be
that
able to
reading
do
on my
this.
dear friend, though.
We all
Thank you.
connected.
You're
Thank
so
you, Marla.
welcome. Anytime, Ellen.
I'm going to share that maybe with her community, actually.
And also Whitley's
Okay.
book was called Communion. Here we
Yes.
are communing.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you,
Michael, sure. Thank you.
Nice, yeah.
Nice appearance. Tony, anytime you're welcome.
Yeah.
You say that now, you'll be running for cover next.
No, I
No,
was running
no,
for cover
no,
right
no,
now.
You have the right attitude.
Thank you, Henrietta.
Thank you, Alan.
For-
Alan's the
Thank you,
man
John,
that
for
makes it
showing
all
up.
No,
happen.
I'm
Right
just
moment.
with the technology. Thank you,
That's
Marla.
right.